Chief Information Officer at LivaNova. Sai, welcome to ISCS event. We also are going to have three different sessions, three different segments in this session. The first one is going to be focused on panel questions. I'll be asking the panelists, I'll be asking our speakers a set of questions. And then the second one, I didn't tell them yet. Now I'm going to surprise them with a rapid fire round. Hope you're all ready. Then the third one is audience Q&A. So if any of the audience are interested to ask a question, feel free to post it in the chat room so we can take up that question and then address it as a part of the 15-minute Q&A at the very end. Ready to get started?
I guess as IT leaders, we get rapid fire every day. So nothing.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. Yeah, I know you're all ready for that, but this is going to be a surprise. All right, so just starting out, maybe for this first question, all of you can give a little bit of introduction about yourself. When I ask the question, when you're trying to respond, you can give a little bit of introduction about yourself, your background, so our audience are kind of familiar with where you come from and your journey. So the first question is, as you have seen with this COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, it has been a distributed enterprise, honestly, right? So we got more blended work environment. We all used to go to work, and during the COVID, even my kids doesn't want to go to school. So everything has come to virtual. Now everybody is saying, okay, let's come back to work, but maybe not, put a mask. So it's kind of all over the map. So what do you guys think? Can each of you talk about how your particular industry has evolved through this journey, pre-COVID and post-COVID, and what you're hearing in the industry? Maybe Sai, we can start with you since you're live.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity actually to talk to this conference and talk to this community. It's a great opportunity. So Sai Edavali, I'm the CIO at LivaNova. We are in the healthcare. We do med devices. Both we work in the brain and heart area to treat epilepsy, and then heart-lung machines. And also, I've been in the healthcare industry for over 25 years now, mostly in the pharma biotech space. So that's where I've done. So getting to your question, Ramesh, in terms of pre and post COVID, it's changed a lot, right? We woke up one day and everything is changed, and we all had to respond really quick. Pre-COVID, some of the things that we assumed that, hey, to deliver projects, we had to be in the office, we had to do things in certain way, and all has changed quite a bit. One good thing that came out of it is when we go to the boards and our leadership teams and saying, hey, we need this budgets to do these things of activities. I think it's become a much more a discussion that we can have. I wouldn't say easily, but relatively easily. At least it kind of resonates with people. I think that from a company perspective that has changed. And from a people and the employee perspective, the expectation has changed in terms of, hey, I should be able to work at different times, different places, wherever I can, as long as the work has been done and so on. The flexibility and the agility has changed quite a bit on that perspective. And on the external environment, especially for our healthcare, there's a lot of things people are expecting. Physicians are now seeing patients remotely. So they're saying, okay, how can I serve patients remotely? How can I add value? How can I give them the information they need on an as close to real-time basis as we can? How can I interact with them? How can I show them all the things that I used to show in my office? Not great things, but still things that I used to show in my office to them, and how can I make them understand all these kinds of things? These are all the things that are coming up. Do we have answers to all those questions? I don't think so, but are we progressing in the right direction? I think we are. We are definitely progressing in the right direction. Not just healthcare. I think as an industry, we changed and we are thinking, and the stories I hear, especially companies like Moderna going from having nothing to $18, $20 billion company. We talk about SAP implementation taking 2 years. how did they do it, right? It's these kinds of things that talk about agility and stuff. It puts things in perspective, and that has been the biggest learning of all. We all learn together. So that's my take on it.
Excellent, excellent. So I think one of these days you got to educate me. So I still feel comfortable when a doctor touches my pulse rather than doing the remote. So that's good. Yeah, healthcare sector definitely has evolved quite a bit. I never would have imagined that you could do remote surgeries and everything, right? So one of my nephews actually works in robotics, doing remote surgeries using a robot. So a lot of evolution in the healthcare sector. Thanks for sharing your insights. So how about you,
Ramesh.
Nag? So
Sorry,
sorry.
Ramesh. I'm getting a bit of background noise when you speak. And it's just me or?
Is this better? Is this any better?
No. Something is, sounds like there's some sort of conflict or so, but maybe just continue. That's fine.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Is that the same for you, Nag and Sai? Are you hearing a lot
It
of
was,
background?
but it's a little better. No, it's back.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like in and out kind of. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right, so Nag, you want to start? You want to talk about your own experience?
My own. Okay. So I'm Nag Vaidyanathan, and I currently serve as the CTO for Duck Creek Technologies, which is in the property casualty insurance software space. So we build policy, claims, billing, right, data warehousing, all the different products that cater to the property casualty insurance space. And our chief competitor is Guidewire. I've been in this company for 16 months now, so I have the experience of being in transition during the pandemic and trying to establish myself as a leader, understanding how the company works as part of transitioning into and out of the pandemic. So it's been like Sai was saying, a real learning experience, I would say, for me personally, in terms of how I interact with people who don't know me and how they get to kind of trust and believe in my leadership. So being compassionate, caring, empathetic, all these qualities became very critical during this journey for us. In the PNC space, software space, the key thing for us really is a lot of collaboration because these products have to work together. And while the pandemic started, we decided to move from on-premise to being a SaaS leader. So there was a lot of work that we had to do via Microsoft Azure based. So we had to work very closely with Microsoft to kind of get our products to scale and perform on the cloud, thinking about all of the different parameters, right? Security, scalability, extensibility, really understanding data. So it became a whole bunch of different journeys that had to commingle for us to still provide the service that made the most sense. So I would say briefly, that is what we've gone through. We have settled into a work environment now where we don't have to go to work. We have a flexible work policy. So we don't have to come into the office space. But what we're trying to do now is, as things are shifting, at least getting into design sessions, solution sessions together. When we do our program increment planning, if I call it, we do it every quarter. We try and do that so then the people know what the dependencies are, what the backlog grooming is, and then they go back, do what it is. Then we meet for Scrum demos, things like that. So we're doing a little bit of connect the dots physically, but mostly virtually. So high level, that's what's going on for us within Duck Creek.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Nag. So Yash, I know that you're from manufacturing sector. So how did the COVID really transform the manufacturing sector? Every time I hear from somebody from manufacturing sector, they're like, oh, nothing changed. We have been going to work then, we are going to work now, we have always been to work, right? So what do you think about this? How did this really impact your side of the house?
No, I think thanks, Ramesh. And let me first say thanks for the invite to speak on the panel. As I think Nag and Sai mentioned, it's a great opportunity. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this community. I'm Ish Cooper, CIO for Nordson. Nordson is what we describe ourselves as an industrial manufacturing company, but we have a number of diverse businesses. So we're also sort of sort of in between industrial manufacturing, precision technology, because we have a number of different businesses. We have a medical division, we have a semiconductor division. So we have various businesses under the industrial manufacturing umbrella. And I've been similar to Nog. I joined, I think I'm approximately 17 months in the job, 17, 18 months in the job. And I'll say it's quite interesting. It's the first time in my career that I've joined an organization without ever physically meeting anyone that I've interviewed with, right? So I went through, I don't know, 6 or so interviews. I'd never met anyone in person. It was all done virtually. I'd never seen any of our offices, probably for the first, I guess, I don't know, 6 months even into the job. I'd never been to one of our offices, our corporate headquarters. So it was, and I think that's a reflection of just how unique of an environment we all operated in during that period of time. And I don't think, at least from I guess there are a lot of similarities in industrial manufacturing because you still have a lot of corporate staff. So you still have a finance and a technology group and an HR group. So you still have a lot of corporate functions that I would say probably follow a similar path to what sort of Sai and Nog described in terms of hybrid and virtual and people being remote. But I guess the difference for us is a significant portion, probably 60% of our workforce are actually plant personnel, right? And so it would be great if we came up with some way to design systems all remotely, but that's just not design and manufacture our systems remotely, but that's just not the way it worked. I mean, these folks still had to come to the plant. So I think that was one thing that was very unique about our environment. If you can imagine a typical manufacturing floor where you have people working hand in hand, product going from one stage of the manufacturing process to the other, people used to working very close on the manufacturing floor, we really had to really rethink our manufacturing sort of layout design, the way we work, different shifts, how to space people on the floor while still ensuring that the manufacturing process completed, was as efficient as possible. So for us, I would say from a corporate perspective, probably a lot of similarities in the challenges that both Sai and Nog described. From a manufacturing standpoint, quite different because we still had a large contingent of our workforce that came to the office. So that was sort of a different dynamic for us. I'll say the other thing that sort of difference in our workforce created, it created, I think, us to really take a hard look at our culture, because you had a subset of our organization that was coming into work every day in the midst of this pandemic. And then you had, another subset of the organization that was completely remote. And it's not you don't want to think of this as the have and have nots or the privileged and less privileged, but that's how it could be perceived. So we spent a lot of time working on how to ensure that there was not this hierarchy or segmentation of our employees in terms of our culture and the way we engaged and interacted. So I would say for us, that's probably was maybe the piece that was a bit unique about our company.
Fantastic. Big difference, right?
Yeah.
So manufacturing perspective. So when we talk about pre and post blended work environment, how about we go into the digital experience aspect of things? I know a lot of times when we talk about digital experience, I've seen in my career, people just build a portal or a website and say, we're all digital, 100% digital, right? But when we talk about digital experience, truly, it is an employee experience, it is user experience, it is customer experience, which is very important. And then multi-digital experience, all the different devices and all the different technologies that you use to handle that, right? So can you share your experiences on where you started within your organization, either here or in the past, and how it is evolving from your perspective, and where do you see this going in the future? And what kind of role does human touch plays in the digital experience? Does digital mean 100% digital, or should there be a human touch involved to make it a lot more efficient? And what about success criteria? How do you really look at the success criteria when you launch a digital initiative project? How about Nag? We'll start with you on this.
Thanks, Ramesh. Yeah, so I will describe two different things. Been in both banking in Europe before I came here, and then consumer lending in New York, and then maybe briefly touch on the PNC space and how that is evolving with digitalization. So the key thing in all three domains, if I look at it, has been customer journeys, right? Really understanding what our customers expect, right? And they have adjacent industries to look at. They look at all the friction points they have in their current experiences working in physical brick and mortar setups. And then what the pandemic really did for them is, like Sai was saying about the doctors, there suddenly needed to be a change in each of our brains in terms of how we could do things differently. So all of these have contributed into how digital journeys have been designed, I would say, across banking, consumer lending, and in the insurance space. The key things, again, like you said, Ramesh, different technologies involved. I will not touch on that, but what I will touch on really is understanding, I call the on-ramps and off-ramps in each of these customer journeys. So before the pandemic, a lot of it was taken for granted. If somebody did something in one space, they could completely finish that transaction. With the pandemic, the models were being redefined because certain days the branches would be closed because of some outbreak of COVID, or maybe they see what Amazon is doing or some other companies doing and saying, how are they able to establish this journey where there is no touch really needed, right? Other than somebody delivering the package at the end. So the on-ramps and off-ramps in these customer journeys became very important. Contextual knowledge became very important, and the interactions with these customers became really critical. So some of this I'll just touch will be like push notifications, digital assistance, co-browsing, right? Electronic signing. All of these capabilities were not all built in as part of those customer journeys. The refined operating model warranted this as, I would say, basics, right? So that is something that's critical. The other thing that also became critical was in the physical brick and mortar world, you could classify people based on they are a high profile customer versus a low profile customer. And you had categories like platinum, gold, silver in terms of how you treated them and who interacted with them. With the onset of the pandemic and post-pandemic, that operating model is also being redefined. So the whole human touch becomes really important there. So you can start off with digital assistants, you can do push notifications, co-browse, all these different things, or call, I'll call you later, right? Like the airlines have all these things became part of the basics, but you still needed in certain cases for a human interaction to happen. And when that human interaction happened, the context became really important. So where they off-ramped, the human had to be available. And the human had to provide enough context and information for that journey to continue digitally or in the brick and mortar setup as the customer chose based on their profile. So those are some of the changes that I have seen in terms of how digital has been refined, if I call it, with technology inputs. In the insurance space, it is a little more unique now, because what's happening is, as insurance, as you know, insurance is not at the, if I call it, the forefront of using technology, right? There's a lot of mandates and legalities and regulations at the state level, and it's always a political thing. So what has happened in the insurance space lately now is, with the advance of telematics, with the advance of telemedicine, like I was saying, all these different new practices have warranted insurance to be thought of very differently, where it is part of the offering. So embedded insurance has become really important. How do you determine liability in telemedicine? That has become more important. I would call it line of business differentiation. People live in the home a lot more, and therefore we use our equipment a lot more. How do you think of insurance differently? Even one of my friends was saying, using the toilet, right? I know it's a funny example, but it's critical. Before we were all going to work, it was not used as much. But now with us working from home, the usage is different. So all these things are becoming more important. Health of homes are becoming more important. So there's a lot of new redefinitions happening that is warranting the use of digital technologies and customer journeys in a very, very different way, even in the insurance space. So banking, consumer lending, I see being a little ahead based on the industries I worked in the last 5 years, but then insurance is catching up quite quickly, I would say.
Awesome. So it's really the entire journey, not just one piece here, one piece there, which is your digital experience. That's fantastic. Great insights, Nag. So Sai, I mean, like I was telling you, I still feel uncomfortable when somebody diagnoses me on Zoom call, right? Without touching my pulse and without really doing a check. I know medical industry is evolving. So what is your take on this, the digital experience aspect, and how do you think it applies to the healthcare industry? And do you think this is here to stay for the long term, or is this more like a big noise at this point? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, not definitely opened my eyes to some key areas at home that I didn't think about working from home for sure. But I think from a digital perspective, the way we use the word digital transformation, digital strategy, and all these things quite a bit, and we hear that more and more everywhere. But I think we have to step back and kind of say, what does digital mean for us? What does digital mean for our industry? When we thought about it, we kind of almost placed them into two buckets. It's almost like your enabling and your empowerment. Those two buckets. Think of your enablement as your digital footprint internal to your company. How are you making your employees, your systems? These are all the things we've been thinking about. These are not the things we've just thought about today, right? These are the things that we've been thinking about, but we said, okay, how do we enable? How do we standardize? How do we modernize? How do we get that data? While doing all of that, how do we do the defend of all of this information that we have? How do we put the perimeter? So that enablement, whether I work from home, whether I work from somewhere else, how do I enable my employees? How do I enable my customers? That kind of enablement need to happen. And at the next part of it, once you build that enablement platform and utilize that, it's not sequential, but you have to do it simultaneously, is the empowerment. How do I empower my customers? Whether that customer is a patient, that customer is a physician, that customer is a hospital, anybody, that customer is whoever, how do we empower that customers? So the internal aspects, the external aspects, and that's how we've been thinking through it and addressing it that way. And when you kind of do that, you focus quite a bit on optimizing, getting the savings, getting the excellence, and how do you streamline all these processes that we have to deal with, working through that. And then externally, how do I release these apps? For example, we have an app called EPC that's out there, and we have a new heart-lung machine that's being released into the market. How do the data that comes from there, our devices generate a lot of data. How do we analyze that data? How can we add value to the patient, right? These are the questions that come up. But at the end of the day, those are the two E's that we have to think about as part of digital transformation, I think, which is enablement and empowerment that leads to the true transformation. Is it one-time transformation? No, because as like anything else, it's a continuous process. You kind of do it, there is something else comes up, and then we kind of do it. So it's an ongoing thing, and we will be in this state, we will be evolving, right? Evolution is a key part of all of it. Why are we doing enablement and empowerment? To ensure we evolve. That's the idea of it, and that's how we are approaching it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, beautifully explained. Enablement and empowerment are the two words take away from this? Excellent. So Ish, going back to you, I know there is, especially in the manufacturing sector, a lot of the products today are made in China. I don't know if it is the same case with Nordson, right? So how does this kind of the same digital experience and digital transformation, when it comes to dependency on a lot of imports, etc., that may be happening in that side of the world, where do you think the digital experience comes into play?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, for us, I would say we typically think about digital in sort of two categories, maybe similar, not the two E's, but two buckets. For us, we look at digital from what we describe as from a business technology standpoint, which is all the sort of the employee experiences, the interactions, the sort of the normal employee product related technology areas. And then we have product technology, which is in our case, the fairly advanced software that's used in our systems that sit on the manufacturing floor. Now, unlike sort of Nog that spoke primarily like consumer and banking, that more customer facing B2C type businesses, we're much more of a B2B business. And I would say, taking that a step further, I would say we're a B2B business that historically has been known more for its hardware than is necessarily its software. So what the last 2 years, what I call COVID as maybe the greatest digital accelerator of the last 25 years, what it's done is really forced us to think differently. Because what we're getting now is, hey, we have maintenance that's needed on a machine in a particular, in one of our customers' manufacturing lines. Well, historically we would send someone out and someone would, we get a request, we send someone out. Well, in the midst of COVID, doesn't quite work, right? So what I'd like to know is what our customers are asking for. Well, I would like a little bit more of a heads up, so more, of a, more preventative maintenance type information regarding equipment that's on my floor. And I would also like you to be able to remotely connect to my machine and not necessarily have to send someone physically to my site. So it's really forced us to go back and really rethink our product technology strategies. And it all has to do, for us, it has to do with connectivity and data, being able to connect to our machines, and then being able to provide the information that those machines are developing or building. So it's really forced us, I would say, sort of in a nutshell, it's really forced us. I mean, the end user side is probably very similar to, or the employee side is very similar to probably Nog and Sai. But where it's been a differentiator for us is on the product technology side, because now we have to really rethink the design of our systems and factor in connectivity and data. And I probably left off one, which is also security. But all those 3 points have really came to the forefront for us as it relates to our product technology.
Wow, fantastic. So talking about connectivity and data, it probably is a natural transition to our next question. Maybe I can start with you, Yash, right? So when we talk about data and analytics, it's a topic that's passionate for a lot of people, right? Everybody says, oh, they're doing data science, they're doing machine learning, they're doing artificial intelligence, they're doing lots of analytics. But when you look at the data, there is a lot of volume, velocity, variety, and veracity of the data, right? Can you tell us about the datafication that is required to transform an enterprise to a data-driven entity, right? So using data for one or two things is one thing, but using data to transform the enterprise is altogether a different thing. So what kind of insights can we draw using the analytics to really ultimately, as C-level executives, all of your goals are to really improve the top level and bottom lines, right? So how do you use the data to accomplish those goals?
You know, I really love the term datafication. Did that come during COVID or was it after? Was it before COVID? I'm not sure. I heard it before COVID, but I love the term. Look, it's a great question. And I mean, obviously, data is sort of one of these buzzwords you hear anytime you're talking about digital transformation. And honestly, I think it means different things for different organizations, depending on your industry, focus area, et cetera. For us, what I'd say is, you know, I touched a little bit on the product technology side in reference to the types of information that our customers, you know, our business to business customers are looking for as it relates to product technology, but also give you an example on what I would say more on the sort of internal or business facing side of Nordson. Nordson has what's called, we use something called, we have a business system called a Nordson business system. And essentially what it is, it's basically using data to define our sort of priorities in the organization from a growth perspective. So it's a database business framework that's used to drive for us to define our growth priorities within the organization and where we invest and where we spend our time, et cetera. So I would say, as it relates to our business, data is, it's our sort of guide point for how we target or define where we focus and grow as an organization. And it's used throughout. So I think the starting point for me, we typically start with the discussion of data, but I would say for me, it starts with a business strategy that has data as a foundational component to that strategy. And that's the case for us. I would say probably more than anything else is, hey, does your organization have a strategy that's rooted in the use of data to drive relevant business decisions? Because otherwise, I mean, a number of people are doing things. I mean, you're building reports and using, you know, Power BI and all the other tools that are out there for analytics. But when you really ask the question of how do you make business decisions as an organization, and you sort of delve into that, I think very few are really using data to drive the direction of the business. And that's what we're doing at Nordson, which is, for me, quite different, quite unique, and actually refreshing from a technology standpoint.
That's a great piece of advice, Ish. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me, Nag?
You're breaking up again, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think I was saying that's a great piece of advice. Apologies for any kind of audio issues. I know this is a technology conference. There were not supposed to be any audio issues. I'm able to hear you guys very well. So thank you so much, Ish. Nag, how about your side of the world? What do you think? I know you have a lot of this experience in the insurance industry, finance industry. Everything is about data. A lot of it is about data. So what do you think? What is your perspective on this?
Okay, it's hard to, sorry, it was hard, but I think you asked me what's my perspective. So high level, right? Like Ish was saying, the basics are important. What is the underlying business strategy? What are you going to get out of the data? I think what has happened now with us redefining the operating model, I think many companies have understood they don't have all of the data. So as we were going through the digital journeys and digitalization, I really liked what Sai was saying with right enablement and empowerment. Data is another, if I say, component of that, right? And if I'll just take the insurance space as an example, some of the roles are actually disappearing in the insurance space as the new breed of insurance is happening, like claims adjusters. It's really coming down. And now it's more important to have more informed workflows of how do we get the estimates done in a different way? How do we get the right documents in place? How do we assess damages? How do we actually understand what action has to be taken? Who has to take the action? So workflow definitions have become more and more defined by rich data, rating of individuals, right? Are they worth these coverages? Are they worth this policy? What is the risk of where they are living? How many people in the household? How many vehicles do they have? What other claims did they have with other insurers? So there's a lot of these things that are enabled through data to find out who has to be rated as low risk versus high risk. Telematics introduces yet another variable, right? How often do you drive? Where do you drive? How do you drive? What car do you use? Do you brake? Do you turn? What weather conditions? All of these things are becoming more and more, I would say, predominant in terms of using data to drive workflows as well as customer journeys. Another last piece I'll just talk about in terms of how data is enabling really, and I know we use machine learning and AI quite a bit, but what that is also enabling us to think through really is inherent biases. How do we act on outputs from AI? What do we do with that output? Can we take the output and say everything is good and move forward? Do we have to have a checkpoint to say what it provides and whether that makes sense? And how do I infuse other kind of information or data, right, to enable what I need to do? Embedded insurance is a great example of how data is enabling insurance now. When you buy stuff from Amazon today, you're also paying insurance, right? They kind of embed it because they know who you are, where you order from, what kind of customer you are, what goods you're buying, and they'll say, okay, you pay with it. Banking is a lot more different, and based on time, I won't go too many industries, but I'll just take banking also as an example. It is really, really different now in terms of how data is being used to provide value-added services in banking. When you're taking a loan, they know what you're taking the loan for. Is it a restoration of a home? You're building a new house, you're going on a vacation. They're able to tie these things together and provide you options and proposals for low interest rate, best destinations, best hotels, and all of that is being enabled by data. So from a customer journey standpoint, they feel like they're being taken care of a little more holistically than just that transaction. So data has a lot of power. Digitalization is a key kind of component of it. So they both kind of go hand in hand, I'll say.
Awesome. Is this any better? I'm using my regular
little
phone.
better. Yeah, it's a little better.
See, I mean, finally the digital technology is not working here. I had to switch to my phone.
I call it data. Yeah, let's say something. Okay.
Good. So thanks, Nag. Appreciate it. And Sai, taking this into the healthcare sector, I know there is a lot of regulations, etc., when it comes to technology expansion and security threats. Especially, it's a lot more in the healthcare sector because of privacy issues, HIPAA issues. Sometimes I can't even spell those words. So what is your take on that? How do you really balance between handling all these technology-related expansions with all the security threats and all these government regulations? What is your take on that?
The best thing is not to use the technology, just lock it up, everything, and don't ever use it. I think that's the best answer. But I think that is so key with the data, and like what Ish and Nag said in terms of how it is driving the growth, how it is driving the thing. But if you think about healthcare, data existed and utilization of data existed for a long time. If you think about clinical studies, all clinical studies is data. But what is changing today with all post-COVID and all these discussions coming is the visibility to this is changing. With the technology and the digital, the visibility to the data is changing. That means we can see, like if you have diabetes or something, and if you put a sensor, you can kind of put it and you can see your own data, right? That's making you ask more questions. And that's where the importance of data is kind of picking up. Data always existed, but what is changing is the number of dimensions associated with the data, the visibility of the data, and the utilization of that data has changing and looking at it. But then there are two things to it, right? There is always good and bad to it, or opportunity and us getting in circles, because sometimes we get quite analytical and we can go into our own analysis. In the same way, when we are doing analysis, it's really important. Are we looking at the right metrics? Are we looking at the right parameters? Are we looking at the right things into consideration? Otherwise, data is as good as your analysis, as good as what you've kind of put around it. So that's where I think it's really key. But while you do all of that, the security aspects in the healthcare industry is so key, because one of the key things FDA requires you is anything you do, you must be able to do it routine way. You tell me every step of how you do it, and you need to be able to repeat it and produce the same result, right? So everything we do in the industry, we have to be able to repeat and ensure that it's tested, verified so many times, peer reviews done, and so on. So healthcare industry is stringent. That's the reason, as frustrating as it is, why a drug takes 10 years to get to market, or why I think at one point drug was $1 billion to market. Now I think that number might be much higher for sure. Why does it take to do all of these things? And with the new post-COVID era, the security threat has gone up too. The privacy requirements have gone up. So the number of regulations, of course, there are industries that are definitely benefiting out of this, right? New industries that have just come up and new opportunities that have come up. But all these things are some things we have to think. And as humans, if we put a device in ourselves, is it secure? Can someone hack into it? These are the fair questions. And we all have to ask that and answer that again. Do we have answer to all those questions? Not, but are we asking those questions to utilize the asset that we have in terms of the data? We have to see data as an asset. Are we utilizing that asset correctly to our benefit in the constraints of all these regulations and all of these things? It's something we have to look at and continuously evolve. Again, go to that, how do we use data and digital to enable and empower to get to that evolution? That's the key at any time.
Yeah, great insights, Sai. Thank you so much. So I know in the interest of time, we got a lot of audience questions coming in. I'm going to get there first. But before we go into audience questions, let's do the rapid fire round. Who wants to be in the line of fire first? I'm going to
I'll volunteer, I guess.
All right, Ish, go for it. I'm going to give you like 10 technologies really quick. I'm going to read them out. And you tell us of a use case. Pick one of the technologies. Tell us of a use case which has huge unrealized potential in your opinion. Here are the 10. Machine vision and natural language processing, 3D technologies, metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, edge computing, nanotechnology, gene editing and synthetic biology, robotics, artificial intelligence, quantum computing.
Okay. I think I'll choose two of those. And I think my first one was not on your list. I think for me personally, I think the virtual augmented reality is probably the one most interesting, because I'm still trying to figure out a way so I can be like become a virtual CIO and not have to be necessarily present all the time. So that for me is the one that's most interesting personally. But I would say professionally, I think for our business, I would say it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, in a number of our areas, but in particular, I would say we have a one of our divisions is a test and inspection division. So long story short, what that business services the semiconductor industry, and essentially what they're doing is advanced inspection, wafer level inspections of various components for the semiconductor industry. And today we have, software algorithms that are, sit on our machines that perform this inspection. However, because of demand, we talk about, digital transformation and all these things, but what that transformation is driving is more pieces of equipment, increased number of chips with the number of, devices, laptops, phones, 5G, all these things are driving increased demand within the semiconductor industry. And as a result, the semiconductor industry is looking for increased precision in terms of the level of inspection as it relates to chip manufacturing and speed. And so for us, while we have, I think, very well-developed and defined software algorithms today, but we can leverage AI and ML to make those automated and much more increase the speed of inspection within that particular business line. So for us, there's a real solid use case. It's one we're working on today, and I really look forward to really advancing our business in this particular area.
Awesome, awesome. What about you, Sai?
I think for me, I'll tell you the interesting part than the realistic part. This might have a little more time to actually realization because I'm a big fan of Matrix movie. Metaverse resonates with me. It's almost like Matrix, right? If you think about it. But then the power is immense, right? We talked about post-COVID, someone meeting virtual, the physician meeting virtual. Now, I have a question about a device, or I have a question of mechanism of action of something, and I want to talk to a nurse about something. Imagine sitting in a metaverse world and having that conversation, right? And getting the feedback without feeling the anxiety of, oh, I can't see the person I'm to be on the call, I can't understand well, and so on. So I think something like metaverse, as simple a use case like this, and something even within the companies, if you look at training, we do cybersecurity training, all these types of training, right, which are critical. But let's say you do that in a metaverse type world, where I think some of the companies have already started that. But if we kind of do that in that kind of scenario, how much power that it can have, that feel, that one-on-one type feel that you can get individually and so on. So there are many use cases like that. And I think the power of it is infinite, immense, but that's what the kid in me excites by looking at it, for sure. I do think that from a business perspective, there's a lot of opportunity coming from there.
It's really an unscratched surface. You're just getting started. Yeah, great opportunity. What do you think, Nag? What is your favorite?
Yeah, so I have dabbled in augmented reality quite a bit. And so the way I'm thinking really, if I look at the insurance space, and POCs have just started now, but if you take the power of AI with augmented reality, one of the examples Ish was saying about remote inspections, right? It will really help us do a much better job of remote inspections, damage assessments, rating policies, workflows and settlement of claims. I would say dangerous places to drive to. All these different things can be kind of figured out with these technologies. How you drive could be kind of, I would say, tested through augmented reality. What kind of cars make more sense for you? With the power of data, AI, and AR, we can do a lot of this. And I've started seeing some of these trends happening now in the industry. Like I said, mostly POCs. Hardware has to evolve, network bandwidths have to improve, the quality of augmentation has to improve. The devices itself have not to be so bulky as they are today. Glasses and lenses are good, but some of these are big gear that you have to wear. So I would say that is starting to take shape. And I can see retail being in the forefront of this quite a bit. The construction industry being in the forefront, training using augmented reality is a lot better than going through hard kind of construction sites and things. So there's a lot of things starting to happen. And I'm pretty sure with all those new operating models being formed, right, in the next, I would say at least 2 to 3 years, there is going to be real valid augmented reality use cases that are practically used in the insurance value chain.
I love all the use cases that you have picked, right? I can't wait for the world where the metaverse, virtual augmented reality, artificial intelligence, they all kind of intersect at some point, right? So it's going to be a very interesting future. Hopefully the human touch still remains when all of this happens. That is the biggest challenge. So we got a lot of good questions from the audience. So let me use the next few minutes to go over the audience questions. Any of you can pick it up. The first question is about on-prem and on-demand for data centers. So what advice would you give for somebody who is trying to migrate from on-premise to a cloud-based data center?
And anyone I want to take? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Since we are in the motion of getting our clients to be on the cloud, right? There is a lot of work to do, I would say. And we have touched on it in different ways, right? One of the key things we really have to consider as we're moving from on-prem to on-demand is you're kind of handing your keys to someone else, right? So the whole security aspect, the data storage, data privacy aspects, the regulatory aspects, disaster recovery aspects, all of these become important for you to kind of consider as you're moving from on-prem to on-demand. Then how your business is moving, right? Your subscription models. How do you pay for your current infrastructure versus when you're on the cloud? Is it going to be consumption-based, subscription-based? You have to think through cost models differently. Your current operating staff that are on-prem, what are they going to be doing tomorrow? So there's a business model imperative to it. New skills and competencies are needed for you to kind of work with something that's on the cloud, where you might have an ecosystem of different value-added services that kind of provide that net result versus you kind of orchestrating it within your own physical facility. So I would say those are some quick things that come to my head when that question was posed to me, Ramesh.
Great advice. The second question is, maybe this is for all of you, and we'll probably close the Q&A with this. Okay. If there is one technology problem you could solve for your organization with a wave of wand, what would that be and why? Sai, you want to start with that? There is one technology problem for your organization.
I'm not sure if there is one technology problem. At the end of the day, the goal is not to look from a technology view, look from your customer and a business view. That's the key. And if there is a problem that I want to solve from my organization, I would want to think like, how can I increase the quality of life for the patient? How can I provide information for the patient so the patient can make their life better? And what technology or technologies will help or data will help is something that we need to look at and we'll kind of do. But my primary focus is the patient and the well-being and the quality of life for the patient. And that's what gets us going every morning. And that's what gets us looking forward to. And that's how, I know that's not the straight answer to the question, but that's how I would approach it for sure. So
it's all about the end customer experience or the quality of the patient, whatever it takes to improve it. That's what you want to be able to solve. Perfect. Nag or Ish, do you have anything in mind for your own organizations? What is the one technology problem?
No, for me,
that you would like to solve?
No, the answer would be spot on. It's what is our greatest business challenge? How do we accelerate growth and how do we use technology to do that? That's our primary focus is how do we accelerate the growth of our business through technology? So whatever that one business opportunity, if there's one, whatever that would be is where I would focus the technology. So yeah, size response is spot on.
Awesome. All right, Nag, anything you want to add for closing, or pretty much
I would agree. I wouldn't known. I think Sai and Ish answered, and that's exactly what it is, right? And it shifts every single day. So
yes,
that's why the rapid fire was not really rapid. So
so we need to come up with some tough questions next time, I guess. All right, so thank you all so much for joining. Appreciate I know how valuable your time is. So really appreciate on behalf of Indo-American Community Services for being able to come in and contribute your valuable time for the benefit of all the participants in the audience. We also want to thank our corporate sponsors, Indo-American Community Services. All the events that we are conducting are made possible because of a lot of our corporate sponsors ITW, Dover Corporation, USG, Nordson, Sonoco, ChampionX. And we also have supported corporations McKinsey, Expedia, Winpack, Duck Creek Technologies, and Coventa. And on behalf of Indo-American Community Services, we also want to thank our advisory board and the executive board and all the teams who have volunteered and all of you who have attended this by coming in on a Friday before the long weekend. So hope you really found some good value out of it. This is not done yet. At 3 p.m., we have one more very, very interesting and exciting session focused on staying ahead of supply chain traffic jams. So you have heard that again and again during the COVID days, chip shortage. I know the government also has passed one of the laws to make sure that chips are manufactured in the US. So there are a lot of things related to supply chain, which is also causing inflation. So we were going to be talking about some of our esteemed panelists are going to be talking about that particular topic at 3 Central, 4 Eastern. So we welcome you all to rejoin at that time. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.